Hi, my name is Patrick Reagan. Welcome to the Operating Systems Linux, where we cover how to install, manage, and use the Linux operating system. In Part 7, Linux Disk and File Systems reviews the file systems used in Linux and then discusses the folder structure that you will find in Linux. It finishes with mounting a USB drive to the Linux file system. For those who are going to take the A+ exam, there are questions at the end of the video. A file system is the overall structure a computer uses to name, store, organize, and retrieve on a drive or disk. It provides a map of clusters or allocation units so that the operating system can find files on the drive or disk. When you install a storage device, you must format it with the file system. Linux is based on Unix, and hence it borrows its file system hierarchy from Unix. While Linux can support NTFS, FAT, and FAT32, the file system associated with Linux is ext2, ext3, and ext4. If you execute the cat/proc/file systems, you can see the file systems that are supported by the kernel. While Windows assigns drive letters to logical volumes, Linux takes the volume and mounts it into a larger tree structure or virtual file system. This virtual file system provides a single set of commands for the kernel and developers to access all types of file systems. The device driver interprets the standard set of file system commands to one specific to the type of file system on the partition or logical volume. Linux typically uses ext3 and ext4. ext3 allows journaling that automatically restores consistency by using log files and checkpoint information. It supports up to 32 terabytes, and a maximum file size is 2 terabytes. It's limited to 32,000 subdirectories. ext4 theoretically supports up to 1 hexabyte, but will usually be limited by the Linux operating system. ext4 is backward compatible with ext3 and 2, making it possible to mount ext3 and 2 as ext4. It does not limit the number of subdirectories. Other file systems that you may find on a system include vfat, which is assigned to the /boot/EFI, which stores the bootloader. ISO 9660, also known as CDFS, is the file system used by CDs, DVDs, and Blu-ray disc. TMPFS is a file system which keeps all of the files in virtual memory. Everything in TMPFS is temporary in the sense that no files will be created on your hard drive. As with Windows, you can use folders to break down the virtual file system into smaller organized groups of files and folders. The top level is the root directory. Notice this is a / instead of the / that you use with Windows. The bin folder, bin short for binary, contains user executable files. The boot folder contains the static bootloader and kernel executable and configuration files required to boot a Linux operating system. The dev folder is short for device files, contains the device files for every hardware device attached to the system. These are not device drivers, rather they are files that represent each device on the computer and facilitates access to these devices. The etc folder contains the local system configuration files for the host computer. This slide and the next slide shows some of the more common configuration files. CompTIA A is used to run specified commands on a predefined time interval. FSTab is used to provide information on disk and their mount points. Group defines information on the security groups. The inet.d has the service startup scripts. The print cap has printer information, and the resolve.conf file specifies DNS servers. The /home folder is the home directory storage for user files. The lib folder contains shared library files that are required to boot the system. The media folder is a place to mount external removable media devices such as USB thumb drives that may be connected to the host. The MNT is a temporary mount point for regular file systems, as in not removable media, that can be used while an administrator is repairing or working on a file system. The app folder is an optional file such as vendor-supplied application programs should be located here. The root folder is not the root file system. It is the home directory for the root user. The SBIN folder, SBIN is short for System Binary Files, is used to store executables used for system administration. /TMP is a temporary directory used by the operating system and many programs to store temporary files. Users may also store files here temporarily. The /USR folders are shareable read-only files including executable binaries and libraries, man files, and other types of documentation. The var folder stores variable data files including log files, MySQL and other database files, web server data files, email inboxes, and much more. The /pros folder contains the information about currently running processes and kernel parameters. The content of the pros directory is used by a number of tools to get runtime system information. This slide shows some of the pros folder content. For example, to see the CPU information, you would access /pros/CPU info. To see memory usage information, you would access /pros/memo info. To see mount points, you would access /pros/mount. Linux distros with GNOMEs will offer Files, which is a file explorer for Linux. If you right-click a file or folder, you will have the following options: Open with, Cut, Copy, Move to, and Copy to, Rename, Compress, Email, Move to Trash, and Properties. Properties shows location, last access and modified date, and creation date. You can also use the Permissions tab to configure file and folder permissions. Many Linux distros will have a disk usage analyzer program that will show the breakdown of your drives, how much each folder is using, and the ability to drill down on each folder. For client computers, you won't have as much need to add additional hard drives to a client computer when compared to a server. However, you may need to connect a USB drive, which you'll need to mount into the file system. To mount a USB drive, follow these steps. Plug in the USB drive to your PC. Then to verify the new block device is added to the /dev directory, run the following command: sudo fdisk-l. Then create a folder to mount to, such as mkdir/media/USB-drive. Then creating a mount point by using the following command, if the device is detected as SB1, to the folder you just created. Mount /dev/sdb1 /media/USB-drive. You could then access the USB drive via /media/USB-drive. To permanently mount the USB drive, you would have to modify the /etc/fstab file. You add an entry similar to /dev/sdb1 /media/USB-drive ext4 defaults 0 These settings represent the /dev/sdb1 represents the secondary drive, /media/USB-drive represents the mount point, and ext4 is the secondary drive file system type. The defaults uses the default options. The 0 and 0, these fields are for the dump and FSCK. We'll just leave them both as zeros. If you need to format the USB device, follow these steps. Unmount the USB device using the following command: sudo umount/dev/sdb1. To format the file system, you would use one of the following commands. To format the USB with a VFAT file system, you would use sudo mkfs.vfat/dev/sdb1. To format a USB flash drive with NTFS file systems, you would use sudo mkfs.ntfs/dev/sdb1. And to format a USB with ext4 file system, you use sudo mkfs.ext4/dev/sdb1. If needed, mount the device back to the file system. In Linux, the swap file is the virtual memory. It is located in the root directory. Question: which folder would you find the configuration files for Linux? Answer: /etc. Question: which folder would you find the files for a user? Answer: /home. For more information, visit these sites. In summary, a file system is the overall structure of a computer used to name, store, organize, and retrieve on a drive or disk. Linux is based on Unix, and hence it borrows its file system hierarchy from Unix. While Linux can support NTFS, FAT, FAT32, the file system associated with Linux is ext2, 3, and 4. While Windows assigns drive letters to logical volumes, Linux takes the volume and mounts it into a larger tree structure or virtual file system. The top level is the root directory with a /. The /etc folder contains the local system configuration files for the host computer. The /home folder is the home directory storage for user files. The /pros folder contains the information about currently running processes and kernel parameters. In Linux, the swap file is the virtual memory. It is located in the root directory. Thank you for watching this video. The next video will be Linux, Part 8, Common Linux Commands. Thank you.